Our next order of business is to place the patient into BiVENT, and I have adjusted all the settings to meet the requirements. And so I'm going to hit accept. Notice that we now have some different things. Instead of setting a respiratory rate, we set a time high and a time low. Instead of setting a pressure above PEEP, we actually set the PIP. So we may get overshoot from 20, but we're saying we want a high pressure of 20 on a low pressure of 5. So we've got 2 levels of pressure. The delta P is 15, right? 20 minus 5 is 15. So that's our delta P now. This is different because remember all the rest of the times we were setting a PC above PEEP or a pressure support level above PEEP. Pressure support we still set above PEEP, but our P high in APRV, which is another name for BiVENT, right? We are setting the PIP. All right. And notice, because we expect the patient, we're setting a very long time at high, we expect the patient to breathe on the P high when they're sitting up here, and so we actually set a pressure support above PEEP as well. So I'm going to hit accept, and we are now in APRV. Now let's see what happens. With those settings, do we receive what we need? So first, let's just look. Notice it's airway pressure release ventilation, APRV, because we most of the time are set at this high level of PEEP where the patient can breathe at any time. It's just an inverse ratio pressure control type of breath, but the patient can breathe at any time at that high pressure. We release that volume for the pressure for a very brief period of time, which allows the patient to breathe out, and then we go back up to P high. That's what's occurring. So then we look, is that tidal volume adequate for our current patient with a 70 kilo ideal body weight? Remember, we set that up yesterday, 175 centimeter. He had a 70 kilogram ideal body weight. We're still in the same patient today. So is this enough? Well, we find out that this actually should be pretty close, right? Now, I realize right now I'm just going to go in and adjust that, because even though I said to keep the same patient, it didn't keep it. So I'm going to go 175. There we go. And you can see, that's why I realized I hadn't saved it. We have 5 mils per kilogram of ideal body weight. Now this may be appropriate for a patient that is sick with ARDS, but notice our peak pressures are still well below 27, so we actually are going to want to get a a larger tidal volume. Our target is 6, according to the best evidence we have right now. So let's try it at 22 and see if that's enough to get us up to 6 mils per kg. Yeah, 5.8. Let's try one more. It might overshoot slightly, but... Okay, so then we have to decide, are we happier with 5.8 mils per kg or 6.1? They're both close, and make a determination, and that's where we'll go. Now, the next thing it says to do in your lab is, well, it asks why it's lower, and the compliance is lower, and so therefore our tidal volume is lower. We, instead of having a delta P of 20 on 5, we have a delta P of only 15, and so therefore a lower tidal volume associated with it. Okay. Now, one of the things we need to do here is really important, and that is when we are setting up our time low in APRV, we want to make sure that our peak expiratory flow is still at 75% of peak expiratory flow. So you can see we're getting this big drop, and then it actually is going all the way back down to 0. So we need to decrease our time at PEEP. I'm going to go down to about 0.5 and see if I think that's still going to be too long. Oh, yeah, it definitely is. Okay, we're starting to get there. You can see we're not returning. We're going to get very short here. There we go. Okay, now just ballparking, that's about right. You can see we've fallen to maybe 70% or something. Let's try one more. Yeah, probably 0.2. That's going to be the closest to 0.75, which is the best evidence of where we want to be. So now we have significant amounts of auto-peep present, right? And you'll notice with trapping gases in the lung, we now have reduced how much our patient's effective tidal volume is as well. So now, with having set that appropriately, or at least in the ballpark, we may have to bounce this around a little bit. We need to make a further adjustment in our P high, in our PIP. So let's give that a breath or two and see if that will get us a tidal volume we're happier with. Okay, 5.4. Okay. And we really want to be 27 or less. So we're right now, that we're overshooting by 1, but our peak pressure now is 27. And okay, let's try increasing our P load just slightly. That'll help. Oh, 6.6. 6.7. I know we're bouncing back and forth, but this is what we do when we're actually setting up APRV, trying to find the sweet spots. Let's try drop. This shouldn't affect. No, we're not going to drop that because we have auto peep of more than 5. Well, let's play with it. Maybe we don't. Looks like we do. There we go. Let's try it at 4 and see if it makes a difference. Oh, it did. All right. Remember, because we don't want to go up on our pressure, so even though it looks like we got significant auto peep, if dropping our P low means we really don't have that much. Okay, so now we're having no effect. All right. Now we're way up. Okay, so let's go back up here. This is really the way we play in real life, so let's try one more. Let's go, let's try that. Four. There we go. So now we've got a little longer. You can see we are probably about 60% for our peak expiratory flow, but we didn't have sufficient expired volume, and so we needed to play a little more to attain it. And so we made the changes we did, and I walked you through them, so I'm not going to belabor them. But now we are in the ballpark of what we want to do, and how we would make those adjustments. Okay, last thing, we're in pressure-limited ventilation. What are you worried about? Anytime we're in pressure-limited ventilation, we're worried about volumes, And so if this patient's compliance worsens, what do you think will happen to volume? It will go down. And if patient improves, it'll go up. And in these patients, sometimes because we're using very high pressures, when their compliance improves, we actually can run into major problems because they end up getting tidal volumes that are far in excess of what they should. So we got to monitor carefully and turn down pressures rapidly as lung compliance improves.